Okay, so Rebecca Trujillo Vest here with Pandion Music Foundation. Today we have a guest, and her name is Carla Patullo. Am I saying it right? Patullo or Patullo?
Patullo, yeah.
And we have N.I. Cruz with Pandion Music Foundation. And yeah, so Pandion is a free online platform empowering artists as they navigate the music industry through educational resources, workshops, wellness guidance, and direct access to experts, helping to provide a constant thread of support for music creators with a specific emphasis on uplifting music creators from underprivileged and marginalized communities. Today we have Carla. She is a Grammy Award-winning composer, best known for her music that blends lush acoustics with layered vocals, nice, and experimental electronics. Carla loves to explore sonic soundscapes and create textures and sounds in her Los Angeles studio, the Sandri for her solo albums as well as for film and TV. Welcome, Carla.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Thanks for everyone taking the time to come out. And yeah, it's very cloudy today, but I'm from the East Coast, so I'm over it. I think I can survive this.
Right, you survived.
Because I
Yeah.
saw someone from Boston here, so that's around my neck of the woods. So it's so great to be here, and I'm just love to share any my process, and maybe this will inspire your process, and you
Tell
know
us,
and
yeah, tell us a little bit more about you. I know I gave a little bio, but give us a little bit more. Give us a little more.
yeah. Yeah, I came into I mainly compose music for films and my solo works these days. I used to be in a band, more of a rock band years ago, and I was touring a lot. I ended up touring with actress comedian Sandra Bernhard. I got to play with some really great people like Rufus Wainwright and Liza Minnelli, and it was just a fantastic experience. I think you know, as a lot of musicians, there comes a period in your life where you're like, I don't want to live on a road anymore. And I started falling in love with film scores actually pretty much as I was on the road. Um, and pivoting to that as I was, touring with Sandra and like learning about supporting stories with music, and it just kind of naturally fell into this film composing world. And, for the last 10 years, I've really been doing that and kind of navigating between both of them and growing artistically, which, you know, sometimes with film scoring, you either have a gig where it's like, we want you to sound like this and we want this and that. And then sometimes you have a gig where people hear your music and they come to you and they're like, we want you and we want your sound. And so it's been very interesting trying to ride that line between work for hire and your own personal work. But I feel like in the end, they both really feed each other well. In my case, I like I was saying, I came from this rock band. We were just a rock trio, and we had this really like grungy sound, and it was so much fun. As I got into film scoring, I entered the cinematic world. I began exploring the orchestra. I began exploring different instrumentations and learning a lot, just you know about orchestration and all the technical things that are involved with film scoring. Um, and I think that has affected my solo work because now I have this more cinematic sound. Um, and and then with my film scores, I often bring in my own sounds to it. And really, I feel like I develop those sounds when I'm working on my personal stuff because there's not that tight deadline when you have to turn stuff around. So you have a little bit more room for experimentation. Um, so I try to keep both going, because they really do feed each other. Um, and I think it starts for me, it starts with listening, um, and listening, to different things, music, going out and taking a walk and listening to just, you know, nature and like taking in, just training your ear to hear what's around you. Because, if you can like just hear these fundamental things, I think it sets this like idea that you don't need to have so many layers of things and so many, you know, things going on. I think, we're all hard workers and we feel like we got to keep finessing and keep doing this and do that this just kind of let's just listen to what's there, and then you can kind of go in and have this blank uh, page to work from, and just hear every subtle thing. And so I try to do that, and I try to listen to as many different styles of music as I can. I feel like there could be something very small that I pick up from things, and so I really think that's important, and I think that feeds creativity. I think um, I think you can find your unique path by listening to so many things. I think, it's not like we're just going to create stuff out of nowhere, right? There's inspiration involved in this process. And so, starting there is fundamental, I think. Kind of nurturing yourself, let yourself go out for those walks and listen to music, and then you're ready to come into the studio and get to work.
Absolutely.
um,
Carla,
yeah.
that sounded like the first part of a book. Like you
Sorry.
I could just keep going and reading this book that you just painted and illustrated. You made it sound so, I don't know, so inviting to go into, this world of music. And so yeah, you brought up inspiration, you brought up, palettes and landscapes, and I love all that. So you what like how did you go to school? Did you go from band to
Yeah,
school, or
I
what
did.
in between, or how did you get into, what was your entering into cinematic?
Well, I did go to school after I got off the road touring. There was a program in Berkeley, Valencia. It was their first year doing it at the time. And, I was kind of burnt out from just being on the road, but then I saw this program for 9 months in Spain. And how can you you pass that up? So I applied to go to that, and it was a really great program. It was, their first year, so there's always a couple hurdles, but it was really my introduction into film scoring. Um, Berkeley, I went to Berkeley, Valencia, and they really taught me the fundamentals of, you know, just knowing the technology. Before then, I was really recording old school style with like, just my rock trio basically.
Right, like
And I didn't
four
even
track.
like, yeah, exactly. And, didn't really get too much into like this synths and like even just virtual instruments. I kept it really raw and simple, um, and I think like that was awesome. It was a very vulnerable place to be, not knowing anything about it, but I think I had to do that to learn. So
Beautiful. What's your DAW choice?
I love to write in Logic, but I love to edit and work with audio and Pro Tools. So I
Oh,
kind of go between the two. Yeah.
okay, cool. That's neat. Yeah, there's so much. I think there's a question. We can either save them for later, or you want to answer them as we go along. It's up to you.
I think let's answer them just so I can kind of push this
Sure.
or, talk about the
Christiana
right things.
Thomas Taylor, listening to so many types of music, do you have a hard time defining your genre like I do?
Yeah, and I think I actually embrace that. I think I think this idea that we have to fit into these, genres that, people make up. I don't think you should limit yourself,
Yeah.
and I do think there, on the flip side, there's when it comes to the business part of things, sometimes, That's challenging, but you know what? You got to make your art to make your art, and you can't let it limit your creativity. And I think, I think you should really, not put that on yourself to stay in a place.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, that always gets me, like, especially if we're just talking and I'm talking to somebody and then that question comes up. I'm always like, oh, how do I describe? And then I'm like, but if you're talking about this last album or the album before or the music in between, like it's tricky, right? Because there's like it sounds like
Yeah.
you went through a whole arc, you know, like so.
Yeah.
Yeah, and here you are now, cinematic and going strong with your what you love and putting your own stuff into it.
Yeah, and I think, for me, like, for example, this album that I put out actually came out of a real necessity for me personally.
Mhm.
And, as artists, like just remembering, it's this reminder. I was going through a very hard time with an illness, but it reminded me that, oh, this is why I, came to music in the beginning. This is this like fundamental need that I have. Um, and so just remembering that as you go along,
Love,
and yeah,
yeah. All right, well, let's dive in. Let's dive deep.
yeah.
So, what would you like to start with, Carla, with our group? And
Yeah, I think like we can start with the fact that, we're all, I think, limited. It's to some idea of as far as like, how much money, how big our studios are. A lot of times there's limitations, right?
right,
And, really thinking of those as like these cool challenges to like really make something unique. So, like for example, I can't have an orchestra, or sometimes I can't even have a quartet, on some of my projects. And that, so I have to really, think outside the box of, oh, how do I make this sound great? And so the first thing is like, really keying in on what is your like what if there's an instrument you play, or if there is or even if you can sing, maybe you can't, if you can't sing like, on stage, that's fine. You don't need to do that for recording, right? You just if you can hear and play sing a tune in tune. I guess nowadays not even in tune, but but
right.
if you can make sound with your voice, and you feel like, oh, this is cool. There's something cool about it. That's a tool. I've got a lot of instruments here. I'm going to give you this example of this Hmong flute
Oh, cool.
that I did. I just did a film score that had this flute in it. And, it was really hard to find, let alone finding somebody here in LA who could play it. And, and I thought maybe I could play a few notes on this. Well, it turned out that I could only play one note on it. And so I ran with that. I wanted to bring some of this into the score. And so, how do I do that? And so, of course, I went in and I sampled that one note, and I, pulled out some of my tools, okay, like maybe, with this one note, I'm in and out of tune, which was kind of beautiful actually, because there was this human quality. And so I loved that element. So I tried to sample it as I was, my breathing, poor breathing technique on the flute, which was, hover, making the pitch hover. And I captured that. And this little thing to the score brought life, where
Mm.
there were a lot of other, MIDI instruments. And this brought some life to the score. And so this was fantastic. And so I'm like, I got this flute here. That's what it does, that note. And I can play with that. So I'm always looking for things. You don't have to be a virtuoso on every instrument you have. I also have a cello that I learned how to play basic notes on, but I use that, and especially in like horror stuff, I can play a scary cello. But it's a cool tool because you go online and you try to find sample libraries that can do this sound effect, or can, bring in that little extra intricacy. and it's really hard to find that. And why not do it yourself, you know? And you can have a lot of fun with it in the process, right?
Right.
Um, so just things like that, and you know, and I've got this. Well, this is like every studio composer should have a bow.
Right. Yeah.
Because you can bow anything, you know, and you can make sounds with anything, you know. And so this is something I always pull out too, you know, whether it's on a guitar or the, you know, on the cello, but you know, just things like this, being open to when you see an instrument that there's the conventional way of how you can make sound from it, but there's also an unconventional way. Like, you know, just think about making sounds,
Right.
and and then you can start to develop your own sample library. And that's kind of where, you know, I wanted to go a bit today. And, you know, it doesn't take much to know how to do that. I sent a couple of, you know, Contact, even within Contact. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Contact, but, you know, within Contact, it's very similar. I'm sorry, very simple to create your own instrument. Where you just, you know, drag a sound in, any sample that you create, and you've got it on your keyboard, and it's quick to access, um, when you're scoring or composing something, and then you can play with it too, you know? So yeah, so there's, you know, there's a lot there. So, you know, but I really encourage people to really, not just depend on your virtual instruments that you buy, like start to create your own thing, you know, build your own library.
Yeah, that's the fun part. Like you brought up the bow. I didn't even think about getting a real bow. I've used the e-bow.
Yes, I have that too. I
Yeah,
have that too, and that's
that's
fantastic, you
fantastic.
know?
But I love the idea of like the bow just on a guitar. Like I didn't think of
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, like on a guitar, I mean, sometimes you can even like rub it across. I mean, really, like drums, you never know. Bass, you can do it with anything, and really just, you know, use that as a fun way. Like, here's another example. I bought this cigar box.
Oh,
It's really, you know, it's severely out of tune right now, but you know, the cigar boxes, it's like, you know, the root, fifth, and octave, so it's pretty easy to play and do slide guitar on. And there's this cheap little pickup in there. But so, you know, one day I was working on a film, and I was looking for this vocal sound, and I was like, you know, and I was singing into like my nice microphone. I'm like, ah, this isn't it. And then I don't know why I did this. I think I was just really tired. But I picked up I picked this up and started singing into it.
ooh.
And it sounded so cool. And so I was like, wow, this sounds like I'm in like this like little cave. And I was like, for some reason it just worked with what I was doing. And, you know, and then I kind of just ran that into Guitar Rig. I don't know if everyone's familiar with that, but it's a nice guitar plug-in. And I started futzing around, and all of a sudden I had this like vocal sound that was like a mixture between guitar, cave. It was just its own thing. And, you know, just kind of letting yourself stumble upon stuff like that, and, you know, go
That's
off on your gear, be quirky with it, just, you
yeah.
know?
Yeah. Do you ever take percussions and then turn them into like the main beat, but mess with them and with all your plugins?
Yes, I mean, you know, like one of my favorite plugins is the Sound Toys plugins. I think they're all amazing. That's something I go to a lot actually because I just love all of them. And but yeah, like, you know, doing that, I think another simple thing to do too is like uh stretching stuff, you know, so elongating the, you know, the timing of things, and you know, slowing things down, which is, you know, in Logic it's so easy, you know, you just literally pull the file, and you know, and then also their sampler, they have a sampler that you could slow the speed down. But like playing with speeds, you can create some polyrhythms that you're like, "Oh, wow, that's really cool." You know? And that's just something as simple as stretching tape,
Yeah.
and mhm.
Well, you make it sound like I don't know about you guys and listening today with Carla, but we just all want to go and get on our for me it's Ableton or or Pro Tools, but like you just want to go and mess around with all your instruments now because this is so it's so much fun to do that. And I agree with you. I mean, like you don't always need all these amazing plugins. You can
Yeah.
do all kinds of stuff. I don't know if you guys know about who Nick Phelps is, but I did something with him where we did a whole thing on everyday sounds, and that could be like your coffee cup doing like
Yeah.
these kind of things, or something shaking, and then you just play with whatever you've got, and you can layer them, and then you have a really cool beat or a little really cool beginning of a song. And yeah, it's fun to do that, right? So
Yeah. And, it's interesting too what you're saying, like, with film scores, I'm often on a very tight, timeline, right? But sometimes, like, I'm doing this film about this animator who used scissors to cut out puppets. And so I was like, well, let's take these scissors and have the scissors make some beat, and so that kind of is like your inspiration of like, taking the coffee cup, taking, just the objects that you have and trying, to think outside that box, yeah.
yeah. Well, that's so fun. And that makes it, and also too, I think for everybody who gets frustrated, you're not finding that right sound. I think you have you know, a good response to that, which would be just look around you. What do you
Yeah,
have? What can you like getting outside of the box? What can you bring into this? And maybe it's not exactly what you had visionary in begin or heard in the beginning, but maybe it opens it up to another possibility. Yeah, I
yeah,
like it makes it fun, right?
exactly, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I I was, when I was recording my album last year, there was a lot of rain in LA, right? And I could like, I have like a little window open sometimes so I could, feel life in my studio, feel awake. And I kept hearing the rain and I'm like, fine, the rain wants to be here. So I went outside and I recorded it and I brought it I was using isotope iris, and I started using it as a pad and I brought it in. And then I had some singers sing the wind sounds, and I just like wants to be here.
Mhm.
So
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if your parents, any of you out in this and listening, but you can use their toys, your kids' toys or something in the room, that's kind of unique. Yeah, I've done that too, but I'm not doing the cinematic kind of whole thing that you're doing. So you get
Cool.
to have a little more fun with that. But it's possible for anyone to go that route. So tell us, what's you went to school in, which is amazing, by the way. When you said Valencia, I was like, oh, Valencia, California. No, you said Valencia, Spain. I'm like, that's pretty awesome, right? And so
Yeah.
Valencia, then you came back to Los Angeles. And what was your first exciting gig into scoring?
Yeah, yeah. Well, when I got here, it was exciting because I started working with my teacher from Valencia and assisting her, who is Laura Cartman. If you guys have heard of her, she scored American Fiction, which was just nominated this year for an Oscar. And we're
Amazing.
also very proud because only a few women have been even nominated for that category. So it's been pretty awesome. And I kind of just worked my way up. I mean, the first gigs were, documentaries with not the best budget. And I just brick by brick just started building and building. And I think you have to do that with film scoring. I think there's
Right.
so much to learn as you go.
Absolutely. How would you like for people who are who are already like so excited to connect and they have their chops down, how how were you able to, what was your what, like there's different ways to connect, you know, you can connect through, you know, word of mouth or introductions or uh, what do you recommend to our listeners today?
I recommend, if you got to think of like directors and filmmakers like band members. I
Hmm.
know like they're hiring you, but you still have this collaborative relationship. So for me, from grad school, I had done a thesis film about this animator who I went on to make a movie about. But, anyways, I brought that to film festivals. And at those film festivals, I met filmmakers. And it just started like that. You just start having a conversation like, that you would have with another bassist and just let it be nice and flowing like that. Like you are just interested in their work. And I think, even though we're looking to get the experience and we're pretty much in the beginning willing to take anything, I think the smarter way too is just to really make sure that it's someone you want to work with. It's someone who has, you know, like it's someone you want to jam out with, right?
Hmm.
There's got to be that. Because if you can find that, I think that's going to be a great project to be a part of in the end, you
That's,
know?
yeah, that sounds interesting because like yeah, like I like that analogy of treating them like you know that's that could be your bass player in a band and you know maybe yeah, like you said going to a film festival because you're interested, you'd love the film, meeting the director or the producer and you say wow you guys what an amazing job, what I loved your film score, you know, whatever, right? And then I'm just love your sound and what and the person you picked and wow, if you know, I'm honored or whatever and then maybe then you go from there, I guess, and see how you can connect.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like it also like tells you if you're able to have this conversation about what you love about their film,
Right.
then you should be working together, because you're
Yeah.
feeling it.
And
Yeah,
remember, right, everyone out there, like I know it's like seems like a small world, but it's a big world. There's a lot of people that want to make movies and there's a lot of, you know, with different budgets. And
right.
so um yeah, I mean I could see how that another way of thinking outside the box, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think, you brought up a really interesting point with the budget because it is hard because, you obviously have to make a living doing what you're doing. And a lot of times, especially in the beginning, filmmakers come to you with not a lot of money.
Right.
And of course, like they expect like something sounding like a full-blown orchestra. And so you have to have your boundaries too, and you have to be able to communicate to filmmakers because sometimes they just really don't know what it takes to
Right.
create something. And so I think like, I think being able to like express to them that, this is what I have as a budget, this is what you can get. But I can make it work with this and really having that, you know,
Yeah.
boundary set.
Yeah. So Mariano wants to ask a question. Mariano, do you want to just ask in person? Like I can unmute you? Okay. I'm going to unmute you. Go ahead.
Hi, Carla. Can you hear me?
Hi, yep.
How you
Nice
doing?
to meet
Thanks for
you.
your nice to meet you too. Thanks for your time. Also, I was reading your bio and I read about how your grandmother would sing to you in Italian. I thought that was so cool because I'm
Oh,
Italian
yeah.
as well. So
Oh,
I thought
cool. Right
that kind of
on.
resonated with me. The question I
Awesome.
wanted to Yeah, the question I wanted to ask you is because I come from more of a background of songwriting and like four chord songs, and obviously trying to tell a story through composition and cinematic, and just telling the story with the music alone is a very different skill from just writing four chord songs. And I've started to dabble over the last year in trying to do more orchestral and cinematic stuff, but obviously there's been a lot of challenges. And I was curious, what when you came from your rock background, what methods allowed you to grow the most and really learn the art of cinematic? I know obviously you said you went to Berkeley and that probably helped a lot, but are there other ways, like
Yeah.
ways that you find propelled your growth coming from a background that maybe wasn't that kind of music?
Yeah, absolutely. In my rock band, we just played power chords. So it was a switch and it was a huge learning curve. So, you know, it's really, you go to the listening part again, right? Berkeley was great. Berkeley really taught me about instrumentation, but it really taught me about technology, the DAWs, the how to spot a film and stuff like that. As far as like, getting the chord progressions, I would listen to different composers. And, Thomas Newman is a great composer to listen to because a lot of times he does like these piano scores, but the harmonies he uses are so interesting. So, a lot of times just studying up on different composers and kind of seeing what they're doing, and then trying to see what they're doing to picture, because certain chords, like, you know, they might like, bring out different emotions, switching to the four chord or hovering on the four chord is like, okay, like we're not going to resolve this. And, it just can bring out different emotions. So it's really, you just have to go in and find a composer like him. And, Desplot's another great composer. Someone just said, yes, Cristobal Tapia de Veer is cool, definitely, and I mean, talk about a composer who has a unique sound, um, I think like, there's so many things we can listen to. And I think jazz is also, I'm not like a big jazz person, but I love listening to the changes in jazz music. And, um, just start familiarizing yourself with, different harmonies, and don't be afraid to go grab, a book that is like, I think I have like some of the piano, I have a lot of piano books that are like pretty simple. But I think it's cool. Just always be open to learning. And, you know, I always like to be a beginner at something. So as a beginner flute player, just leave that open, and think about that have an open mind with that.
Awesome. Thank you, Carla. Appreciate it.
Great. Okay. So, do we have any other questions? I feel like, did you
I
go
think I
live?
saw someone.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I usually have my mic muted, so when I do these things. Yeah, I'm just curious about the, well, everything is interesting. But one of the things I'm kind of flirting with now is I use Logic a lot, and I used to use Pro Tools, but moved over to Logic for songwriting and a couple of years ago. And I'm working on, perfecting my skills there. And so I'm just curious, like, why do you like using Pro Tools for editing? Because I found some things were a little better that I thought that I liked in Pro Tools, but I just want to hear your take on that.
Yeah. Well,
If
there
there's
is a
anything
cat.
specific. Yeah.
There is a catch to why I end up there is usually I have to deliver my film scores in Pro Tools.
Oh, I see.
So I end up there. I know I'm going to end up there eventually. But I personally just like the grids and the editing. I just feel like it's more precise for me, like of, just the regular cutting, some of the tools that Pro Tools offers with audio. It's a little bit easier for me to access, and I think with Logic, it's so fantastic to like have that set up with your instruments, and your virtual instruments. And I just love it. I love the controller, controlling it from my iPad and the live row. I love it. I love Logic. It's very user friendly, and I appreciate that.
So you're exporting your work in Logic Pro and
Yeah, a lot of times I'm
okay.
exporting stuff in there. And, it might just be like some of the audio stuff that I've done. I mean, I do edit in Logic as well. It just really depends where the project's going. If I'm going to end up in Pro Tools, delivering, I'll just go into Pro Tools anyways and get it, a little earlier than normal. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Here at the studio, we record audio in Pro Tools and then maybe play around in Ableton. Or that's me.
That's very cool. I mean, everyone has their process, and I think
Right.
that's so
Right.
so cool, like um it's I do feel though like every time I have to use an outside mixer, they want Pro Tools,
They want
and so it's like, okay, well, here we go into Pro Tools. But
Yeah.
I've had that video engine crash on me in Pro Tools so many times.
You have it, do you, so when you're composing to screen, do you have it up above you?
I do. I just changed my setup, but I do. I have it on a big screen above me. I used to have it on the side. I fluctuate with it, but I do. It's really important to um not forget that the picture's there.
Right. Right. Right.
And I think it's great. When I start a score though, I kind of like to be without the picture so I can just develop my themes and not be tied into any tempos or time signatures yet.
Yeah, like you're maybe you know the story because
Right.
read or whatever. So you have it in your head, and your inspiration comes out with the you're contributing to the story because really, I don't know about you guys, but I know some scores really make the film because I'm going to just remind you guys if you never saw this movie called Siesta. Um, um, I really felt like it was one of those moments where the music made the story kind of pop. And let me see, who was the composer on that?
Yeah, I don't think I've seen that.
That it's an interesting movie, and uh, one of the reasons why I thought I I felt really like strong about that was because I felt like the horns in it and just it just had its own personality, almost like it was its own um character. And like I don't know if you get that sometimes with with music, like the music somehow becomes
Yeah.
its own, like yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, and so Miles Davis was the main artist on that,
Cool.
so obviously it's big that way. But I can still remember the sound, and I hadn't seen this movie like forever, and I saw this really young, and I remember thinking, wow, the music really created that eerie kind of feeling,
Yeah.
and I and I felt the same way about White Lotus, kind of, you know.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's like a lot of times you could be the sound of, you know, the where it takes place. You
Right.
could be the sound of a character. I did a film recently that, I was a demon and the demon didn't talk in the film. So I created a sound that was the demon.
Wow.
And
Cool.
right. And so and it was like interesting. So the music was her dialogue. And so just stuff like that, I think it's like when you're reading a script or you're first spotting a film, these are the things you got to think about. How's my music? What's my music going to do for this film? And often directors know what they want too. Like, yeah, like I need this character. I want something that drives this character. Um, yeah.
Yeah. How cool. How cool. I'm just going to put this in the chat because now I found the
Very cool. I
yeah,
love it.
the siesta. Yeah. So I so okay, so here we have our community. We have people that songwrite, sing, um, that are composing, the collaborating. But I think a lot of a lot of our community write songs, but knowing that the instrumental part could be used on its own. So
Right.
would you like to maybe touch on that a little bit, like how, what
Yeah.
to look out for or what to.
Yeah, before I got into scoring, I was writing a lot of songs for film and TV. And, I had a wonderful publisher who, also kind of mentored me. And, she would she kind of taught me the difference between, first of all, writing songs for TV and writing songs for your album. And there's some things you need to do, as far as that type of sync stuff. Um, I think like, with lyrics especially, if you're doing stuff for TV, that's a whole other conversation. But using your instrumental songs, you know, it's kind of like you got to think about how they can work on their own. Like first of all, when you mix your songs, you always get a bunch of stems, you know, and made, which is, just isolating different instruments, groups, and that way you get flexibility and you give flexibility to whoever's putting this on television, because that can create a whole new song almost, like that type of music editing can really, take, say you have this instrumental and you've got this groovy guitar thing going on, you can move that groovy guitar thing anywhere and try to make it work. Maybe it'll create something different. Maybe when you take it and put it on the minor part of the song, it sounds cool and different. It just opens up this world of like it being a more interesting composition. Because there is, when you take away vocals, the song can be pretty flat, right? So if you give yourself that flexibility with stems, you can build it how you want to build it.
Right. Um, so
Did that
do you,
answer your question? I'm sorry.
yeah, do you ever break, like, I mean, I break the rules, like, like with the chord progressions and just kind of go off. And like if it sounds good to you and it feels right, if that makes any sense. You know how
It,
some people try to follow chord progressions in a kind of specific way and keep with the pattern and keep with the,
right,
do you ever
right.
break the rules when it feels appropriate?
Definitely, always.
Yeah.
Definitely break the rules.
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
Sometimes they in school they used to say you need to know the rules in order to break them.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I think, don't be shy of going off that structure. I think, film scoring actually taught me to do that a bit, because you have to have odd signatures every once in a while because you're going a picture and you need a 2/4 bar or a 3/4 bar or whatever, and you have to land on a cut or something. um I think, like, I think sometimes you think that you have to change everything in your progression, but you could go and just change a few, one chord, and it'll take it somewhere else. And but trying to get out of that pattern, 4-bar pattern, is something you should try to push yourself to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you watch the Soul, the movie Soul, the
Uh,
Pixar movie?
I listened to the
Yeah,
soundtrack.
the soundtrack. Okay.
Yeah, so
So
cool.
listening to this, the soundtrack is great, but if you watch the actual Pixar, not that I'm asking you to do that because I'm sure you're super busy, but what I love about the way they portrayed the characters is the characters kind of feel to me like they're part of the music, like the way they colored it and presented all the characters and little souls.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because it had it still has like an impact on my heart, the way they connected the music with and it is a music about me. I mean, it is a movie kind of about music. It's about jazz, but it's
Yeah.
really, and it's really pulls out that thing where we're connected to music in such a deep way. And so, we soundtrack of our life. That's really how I look at music. My music, I
Yeah.
get obsessed.
Yeah. I think, like, even like from just the instrumentation, sometimes you can like lock in this connection, between, the trumpet and a character. So I think like there's really, interesting things like that when it comes to scoring. And you sometimes you really want to be the themes you build are, these character based on these characters. And and really trying to get, sometimes I just sit and think about the characters in a film and really deeply try to connect with them and come up with something that feels like them. um yeah, it's kind of really dive into their psyche a little bit. So
So Mariano has a question, and Mariano, I actually went right before one of the big music shows. I went to an Atmos presentation with Apogee, because I know the Apogee people. They're actually very close to me, not at home, but also in their studios right next to my son's school. So it's like I feel like I'm right next to Bob Mountain and Betty, like they're just right in my sphere. But they presented the Atmos in a really beautiful way, and
Mhm.
different ways you can do it. I heard when they did a presentation on Dune, um, and the way they were the Atmos came alive. I think that I think I think that the technology is there where you could just move it right into it. What's your take on Atmos, Carla?
I mean, I personally, I think it's wonderful and I want it, on every project. I personally love it. And I will say for a majority of the films that I work on, that I'm still in the 5.1 world, and stereo. Some stereo even, especially like I just did an indie film that's going to be at Tribeca, and that was just delivered in stereo, with stems. And then they'll do the 5.1 mix at the dub stage. And that's usually how I tend to do that, just to give that flexibility with them. And but yeah, and then but then I did a Disney Plus project, and that was all in Atmos. So and then my album I mixed in Atmos. So it's just been, I don't know, it's just been pretty cool to experiment with both, um
Cool.
to keep both going. Yeah.
Right. I just copying something from the internet for you, Gail. Gail's asking, what is Atmos? It's the surround sound, but how would you? It's like you're in. It's like you can hear
Immersive,
the sound
like, yeah.
behind you, around you. It's weird because Bob Clearmountain gave us a little presentation, and you could hear some of his old music that was redone to fit with Atmos, and you could hear something that was odd right at the back left of you, which is standing out, but it's okay because and it's kind of an art form, right? Right, Carla?
Absolutely. I mean, I work with a fabulous mixer named Daniel Cresco, and he is just so, his artistry when he's mixing, and Atmos is just phenomenal, and it's just a beautiful experience. I feel like it really elevates the listening experience. Yeah.
Because you
Um,
as the mixer get to decide what the audience listens to, in what capacity and where it's going to be, right? You get to pick
yeah.
and choose.
Yeah, and he's another part of the band. So, like with someone like Daniel, who I've had a long-term relationship with through the years, there's also this, I trust his taste a lot. So, depending on who you work with, you when you get into that sweet spot with the mixing engineer where you have their trust, then you've got this whole world opening up of possibilities, that you wouldn't even think about.
Right,
So,
right, right.
yeah,
Avalon, that's what I was thinking. The song Avalon is what I heard. And I was remembering, wow, I'm hearing things in that song that I didn't notice before, but I did notice in the back of my head, and I'm hearing it as another, like, let's just talk about another character, just peeping
yeah,
out, kind of like almost like another singer that just starts singing, but it's part of the music production. So it's like it's pretty cool, Gail. If you
yeah,
want to go look in Los Angeles, there's a lot, but because I know you have access to Los Angeles, so like find a place that you know, sometimes KCRW does live performances at Apogee, and maybe you can get invited to that, or you can ask to be invited to one of those, and you can hear their surround sound and presentation. It's really beautiful. Yeah. We have 8 more minutes, you guys. So, and we got Carla. So, like, you know what? Let's you know, ask away, or if there's anything else fun you want to share with us, Carla.
Um, yeah, I mean, I just, I did put like that little, I didn't know what level everybody is and if it's just a mixed level, but, you know, I really encourage you guys to start making your own libraries, as I said earlier, and, and contacts the simplest instrument that you could, I think, do that with, or I assume everyone probably has contact, but just, keeping those possibilities open. Also, I used to live in Austin and I picked up this book about making your own instruments. Just, I don't know, just pushing yourself to do things like this with like, um,
Can you
thinking
share?
outside the box.
Can
Yeah,
you
I
share
don't know
that?
if you guys can find this book because I found there's a place in Austin called Half Price Books, and that's where I got it. And so if you can see that, it's Make Your Own Musical Instruments, Merle Mandel and Robert E. Wood. And it goes through like making home chimes at home, just like super fun, crafty stuff. It's so Austin, this book. I
Oh,
love it.
Anai, is there any way you could try to find that book to share?
Yeah, I'm looking for it right now.
Awesome. You're so
I'll
fast.
keep it.
I can't even
Oh,
keep up with you, Anai.
also, like, layering is something that I do a lot with my own vocal, kind of like wall of sound stuff, where you layer the same
Yeah,
part a
yeah.
few times, just stuff like that. Like, um, just being open to trying these new things and using some human elements in your music. I think that's how we're gonna win or fight off the AI.
Right. Oh, right. That's another conversation, right? I mean, I I don't want to scare anybody, but somebody is one of the producers I work with. He's like, "Oh my God." He's like, actually, he's going to come and give a presentation. You guys look out for him. His name is Levi Downey, and he's going to give a presentation on AI. I mean, he's going to not presentation. He's going to be a mentor, and we're going to talk about AI because he's we're looking at AI. You have to look at AI like just start looking at like as a DAW. Like how can I use it? And not only that, but remember, live performance can go to that next level. Still
Right.
beautifully live, but you can implement some of this really cool thing, and that's how we'll always be um better than AI. And
Yeah.
AI, if you're listening, sorry, but but yeah, well, live performance rocks. Yeah. So, uh,
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, I don't, I think just use it like a sandbox. Just use AI like as a tool, right?
exactly. And I think it's a good place for people to start embracing our imperfections, like how cool, you listen to some of the older records, maybe someone's a little out of tune, maybe the drum beat's a little off, or, but these are so cool. These are records that we love. And so I think, just kind of letting that come in,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mariano, any recommendations for your favorite string libraries when you aren't able to get a real orchestra?
I mean, I love Spitfire. I think they have a few fantastic libraries. I know they're a little bit pricey, but I feel like they're worth it you know, if you can start there, I think they have like a London one that's really great. Even their solo strings are really good. So, yeah.
Cool. And when you can get a quartet in your little studio,
Yeah. Well,
or
don't forget
or
the big,
you can always use my studio if you need to.
yeah.
But if you get your quartet, are you the one conducting? Are you good at? Are you like?
Yeah. I mean, I actually prefer to be, with film scoring, I prefer to be in the booth.
All
so
right.
I can give the notes and kind of wear more of the producer hat.
Yeah.
When it's a quartet, the violin one will conduct, or the leader of the quartet will conduct. Um, one thing I forgot to say on these budgets, when we, for example, if you go, Mariano, to get the Spitfire strings, and you get like one violinist to come in and just layer that one violinist on top, you can really do a lot of convincing with that, and use it. Or if you can budget in a quartet and have it under an orchestra and just, layer that quartet a couple times, you know.
Yeah, and I think people have had some luck with Fiverr in getting if you're very clear, in getting the instrumentation sent to you, you know, and then you can play around with that, right? I mean, and then you can
Absolutely.
find a cost-effective ways to do that. I have actually in the past.
And then the cheapest way to do it is if you use different libraries together.
Yeah.
So
That's a
that's,
good idea. Like
yeah,
just
just
take, because they have their own thing, right? Like
they're a little different and
pick
they sound good
instruments,
when they're,
yeah,
yeah,
pick instruments, and then you go to contact, and then yeah, cool. Yeah, that's a good
yeah.
idea. The layering is so that so when you layer, you do you do the side and then in the middle and
If-
bring it together that way?
Yeah,
Right.
different mics is a great way to start off with too. Like when I'm layering vocals, instead of just using the same mic, sometimes, I mean, it depends what I'm going for. If I'm going for more like this clean, kind of like, slick, everything sounds really tight, I'll just try to get it perfectly together with one mic. But if you want a really rich kind of sound, like you want it to sound like a choir, then I would use like different mics and from different, you got to like think like you're each person in that choir standing in a different place. So from different angles of the mic. Um, and, I technically like, it just depends on the size you want. A lot of the stuff I work in is smaller ensemble. So, I do like 3 voices at least to each part.
Oh, cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense. I love so yeah, these are all really, really amazing tools, everyone. Like this is like this is a not just a little, a nice peek inside, what Carla does, and this is for scoring and making these beautiful cinematic sounds. Thank you, Carla, so much.
Thank you. Yeah.
We're
Happy
doing,
creating.
yeah, we're doing Ask Me Anything with you, right? I think you said yes. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yes.
The Ask Me Anything section on our Creator Circle Facebook page. Yes.
And
Awesome.
if you don't know what that is, you can go on our website, and I will share with you what that is, and you can sign up, and you can get in with Carla. Ask Me Anything for 2 days, and next week we have music supervisor meet and greet with Jennifer Piken, and that's Wednesday at 11 a.m., May 29th. And Carla, this is so much fun. I just think we need to get you back someday. I
Oh,
know like you're super busy, but so much gold. And we're gonna definitely let people know to watch the replay that they couldn't come, and really just amazing. I felt like you were with us. Not all the time do you get this, but I felt like you were with us in our studio, like helping us do this and get us inspired, and yeah, I think a book is next in your agenda. It's so well. I think making a book would be great. I don't know if I missed any questions, but you guys can bring them to Ask Me Anything. And yeah, there were some great
Thank you.
comments. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Carla. And everyone have a super fab day.
Take
Blessing.
care.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.